Hey, it's Melissa from Kiwi Banana, and today I wanted to record a video about something I guess is quite difficult to talk about, and I guess could be seen as quite controversial. So I was actually unsure whether I was going to make this video. I ummed and ahed about it quite a bit, and then I got a comment on my Burning Man summary video, and they were, I guess, critiquing my summary. I'd done the summary quite soon after I'd got back, or I'd recorded the video quite soon after I got back. I was quite tired, and I basically was saying that, it was an amazing experience going to the gathering, being in the city, being part of it. And they were questioning why I didn't bring up an unfortunate event that occurred there, and that is that someone had run into the fire of the main structure that gets burnt every year at the gathering. And I didn't feel it was the time, obviously, straight after to make a video, to make to capture something, what I was feeling about that on film. And now that I've had more time to think about it and process it, I possibly hold some controversial views on the matter, and I think that's okay. Maybe you don't. So I just wanted to share them. Now there is quite a lot to cover, and I thought, sorry, there's a few mosquitoes around, that to try and retain your attention, that I would probably split this film into two videos, just because I feel like there's two main things that I want to talk about with this. And I guess, there is a lot to cover. So first thing I want to mention is that it's not the first time that someone has died at the gathering. There has been other events at the gathering where people have died. Someone has run into a structure before. People have gone under vehicles. There was an incident where someone has taken their own life inside a tent. So things like this have happened, and certain measures have been put in place to prevent further things from happening. And I've even been at a different gathering where someone's tried to run, someone has run into a campfire. So things like that, yes, they do happen, and I'm not mentioning that to belittle the incident or of what's happened, but it's just to sort of let you know that if you don't go to these, if you've never been to gatherings like this, you don't go to these sort of things, and you're hearing about this for the first time, I just let you know that, it's, I would be lying to you if I said that things like that don't ever happen, because they can happen. And gatherings like this are usually considered outside societal norms, and, just because it's outside societal norms doesn't mean that bad things don't happen. I guess, if you want to see it as a bad thing, which I'm sure many do. Now, I'm not sure if YouTube is going to flag this content, probably especially this video, because I'm actually going to be talking a little bit about drugs. And I guess the topic of drugs is not considered family friendly by many people. So, I'm hoping this video still reaches a fair amount of people that it needs to. However, YouTube may prevent that just because of the topic I'm talking about, and their rules around, I guess, what they consider freedom of speech, and what's advertiser friendly and all that sort of stuff. Now, I'm assuming most people outside of Burning Man, when they would have heard about this happening, they would, if they knew about the event, they would have this assumption that that there's lots of drugs at Burning Man. And for me to say that there is no drugs at Burning Man, that would probably be a lie. I would imagine if you went to somewhere like that with an intention of wanting to consume any particular sort of substance, you could possibly find it. And Burning Man has a weird way of, if you have an intention for something, it may prevail, or Burning Man may just provide you with what you actually need and not what you want. Anyway, that's a video for another day. So, and how am I going to put this? A lot of people would hear about this and think, okay, so a man runs into a fire, there are drugs are the problem, that's the reason, that's why he did it. I think they actually uncovered later that he had no alcohol, no drugs in his system during the fire jumping. And I almost forgot to mention, we actually, about 50,000 people would have witnessed him doing this. I seen him run into the fire. We were slightly away from, I guess you would say, he wasn't directly in front of us, but I did see him trying to run into the fire. And I said to my partner, have you seen him? Where is he? Has he come out? I just spilt water all over myself. Oops. So I said, look, have you seen him come out? And he said, no. And I said, well, he's gone. It was a weird moment, and I think my partner misinterpreted what I said. But what I was meaning is that I had a feeling that the person is no longer with us on this planet. So I don't know why, but and it turned out later he actually hadn't passed at the time. He later passed at a hospital. I think they took him to Reno after the gathering. But anyway, so back to what I was saying with people assuming that because it's, Burning Man and there's lots of drugs, that drugs are the reason as to why why he did that. But the medical science shows that possibly he wasn't even consuming anything when he ran into the fire. And I'll tell you what, some of the most anti-drug consuming people that I've ever met tend to be the ones that consume the most drugs on a daily basis, and usually in the form of things like alcohol, coffee, or something like cigarettes. And I guess the category of drugs encompasses a lot of things, and of course most people would consider like coffee reasonably safe drug to consume, and alcohol is fine because it's legal, and as long as you only drink within these sort of restrictions and all that sort of stuff. And and for me personally, I've seen alcohol do more damage to people's lives than any other drug that I've known of. So it really sort of shows something, I guess you could say. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not saying that you should consume drugs or that you shouldn't consume drugs. I just don't think that you should assume that all drugs are the same. And, I guess different drugs have different effects on different people, and some people use them for different reasons. A lot of people will go to a doctor and they might get drugs prescribed to them. Like I said before with alcohol, a lot of people will go to a bottle store and they will buy drugs there. And some people will use, drugs that are illegal. Just to name some, things like heroin, methamphetamines. I'm a bit worried that some of these drugs I'm using you probably don't even know, because different countries use different slang for different things. But and there's people who use things like marijuana, and people use things like magic mushrooms and maybe peyote, and there's a whole range of mind-altering substances, you could say, out there, and some are considered more as plant medicines, and some are considered, I guess, more detrimental. But to someone who, probably drinks alcohol all the time, all the time, and has had very little experience with drugs. It's very easy to look at, you know, those drugs that are illegal, that are not prescribed by doctors, that you can't go to the store and buy, and that people don't just go to a coffee shop and drink every day, is bad. They are bad, and that's it. There's no need to talk about it. There's no need to educate people about it. There's no need to provide space for people to I don't know, I guess, you know, overcome that. And I guess it comes, you know, I could almost do a whole video on how we've now criminalized addictions. So, you know, it's no longer really a mental health issue. It's more of, you know, that person's a drug addict and they should be put in prison, which is not necessarily a good thing to do either. But that's a video for another topic, for another video for another day. So, yeah, from my experience, I have seen that some drugs affect people in a more negative way, and I have seen that even some drugs can affect people in a different way that's not necessarily considered negative. You can look at most religions and most cultures around the world, and if you go back far enough, you will probably find that they may have used what many would now consider like plant medicines in, I guess, could be seen as more spiritual or religious purposes. And I'm not saying that that was a good thing or a bad thing, but it's definitely something, you know, that the use of drugs is not really a recent or a new thing within, you know, human civilization. And I guess I would really like to see more discussion and more space created for that to happen, and also obviously more facilities available for those that do fall into a trap of, especially when you consume drugs that are actually considered, well, not considered, they are very addictive. And of course for most people, not all, but they don't actually realise that different drugs will actually have different levels of addictiveness, if you can call that, either on the mind or the body or both. And you know, if you go the top end of the scale, it's normally the opiate derived drugs that tend to be very addictive, and most people know that to be things like heroin. And then you can go at the other end of scale on the you know, if you want to look at something as being addictive, and you could look at something like I guess using the example of magic mushrooms, and that is much less addictive. You know, the science that has been done has shown that it really actually has, the science to date has shown that there is no element of, you know, you consuming them and then you needing them to consume them again. And, you know, and both of those things will affect your mind and your body completely differently as well. So yeah, I guess the basis of this is just to say that, well, to remind people or to let people know who are unaware that actually, you know, even the illegal drugs, each of them affect people differently and affect each person differently. And when people do take them, they can take them for different reasons. You know, there is, I guess, ways people may consider to be safer than others when consuming them. And I have known many people within my life so far that have consumed them for spiritual reasons, if that's what you could call it. Sometimes they are consumed in a reasonably safe environment, and it's usually only particular groups of drugs, and that normally sits within, I guess most people would say, the sort of psychedelic realm. And then again, you know, that's the magic mushrooms that I mentioned, they sit within that. So things like that don't tend to be very addictive, and you could consume them once and never have the desire to ever consume them again. And you could consume them and they actually have no effect on you afterwards, should I say. But there is always a risk. You know, things like that could cause or make worse if you've got something like schizophrenia. So I'm not saying that drugs are for everyone, and I'm definitely not saying that all drugs are for everyone, that's for sure. Yeah, so that is this video. So next time you pick up your glass of wine or beer and decide to, I guess, badmouth, if that's what you want to call it, those that have used plant medicines, or I guess you could say drugs, whatever whatever word you like to use, and that are doing it maybe safe, if that's what you can consider, and it's not affecting other areas of their life. They're not addicted to it, it's not over-consuming them. Maybe think twice about it. I personally, I don't drink alcohol. I gave that up 3 years ago. I didn't find it was a very conscious drug, and that's not the sort of thing that I'm looking for in my world. But if that's what you want to do, that's up to you. But it definitely didn't feel right for me to continue consuming a drug that I felt like it was, just as like losing my consciousness while I'm consuming it. I'd rather be conscious, super conscious if I could, if I was ever going to consume, a mind-altering substance. And I don't drink coffee. That stuff's pretty addictive. Never liked the taste of it. Guess I'm pretty lucky on that sort of regard. Cigarettes, not really my thing either. I only did that for a month when I was 15 because I liked the head buzz. Different space, different time period in my life, looking for different things. I am lucky enough that I don't have to consume any prescription drugs. So I'm very lucky in that regards that the only sort of drug, if you want to call it, that I consume is, I like a little bit of cacao. I like a little bit of chocolate. I'm guilty of that. It's what I shouldn't be doing. And, I would be lying if I said that I have never tried drugs, other, illegal substances in my life. When I was a teenager, sometimes you do those things, and sometimes you don't, and that's absolutely fine. I would never encourage someone to, and I guess I'd be more on the side of discouragement, but discouragement in the way that you're actually telling them what could happen, not just fear-mongering somebody. You're actually saying, hey, look, I've experienced this when I took this substance, or, are you thinking about where you're going to be doing this? Are you thinking about who you're going to be doing this? Are you thinking about what's your intention for doing this? More or less asking questions around are they actually sure that they want to, rather than saying, oh, it's bad, it'll make you go crazy. So I'll be moving on to part 2, where I'm actually going to be talking more about mental health.